Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. I'd like to take a second and acknowledge the elite members of the channel. Thank you all so much for your continued dedication and support of Back to Ashes. I'm eternally grateful. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes, for once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab your snacks, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Creepy Stories. After this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. It was a night like any other, or so I thought. 6 or 7 years ago, I was locking up the office in our sleepy little farming village. A place so small it felt like the world forgot it existed. The air was thick with that rural quiet, the kind that presses against your eardrums, heavy and unnatural. B, my coworker, stood beside me, her breath fogging in the chill as we finished our closing routine. The alarm was set, the shop's innards secured, and my key was in the motor to bring the shutter down. That's when it happened. A sound that clawed its way into my bones. A car engine roared to life, shattering the silence like a predator's growl. The shutter clattered in the pavement, and before I could catch my breath, headlights sliced through the dark. A slick, pitch-black vehicle, maybe a Jeep or Land Rover, I'm no good with cars, barreled around the corner and screeched to a stop just 15 feet away. It parked perfectly in the blind spot of the shop's ancient CCTV, as if it knew exactly where the camera's gaze faltered. The car gleamed unnaturally, its tinted windows so dark they seemed to swallow the light. No mud, no dust, none of the grime you'd expect from a farmer's rig in these parts. It was too clean, too deliberate, like it had been polished for this moment. B and I froze, our small talk dying in our throats. The engine idled, a low guttural hum that vibrated in my chest. Whoever was inside didn't move, didn't get out, didn't even crack a window. They just waited. 5 minutes dragged by, each second stretching into eternity. I could feel their eyes on us, though I couldn't see them. My skin prickled, a primal instinct screaming that we were being watched, sized up, hunted. B, older and sharper than me, had that look, mom mode, protective, her gaze darting between me and the car. I can drive you home, she offered, her voice low, urgent. Her car was parked up the road, away from that thing. My parents' house was a short walk, 2 or 3 minutes, but it meant passing right by the stranger's car. I hesitated, my pride wrestling with the dread coiling in my gut. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile. Stupid. I'd be the first to die in a horror movie, and I knew it. I stepped toward the opposite pavement, thinking distance might save me. But just as my foot hit the curb, the back door of the car swung open with a soft click. A man stepped out, his movements too smooth, too calculated. He wasn't masked, but his cap was pulled low, shadowing his face. White, tall, easily 6 feet, lean but strong enough to overpower me or B without breaking a sweat. He didn't look at us, not directly, but I felt his presence like a blade at my throat. He lit a cigarette, and the flare of the lighter casting a fleeting glow across his jaw, sharp and unyielding. Nonchalant, like he had all the time in the world. Then he started moving, circling the back of the car, closing the distance between us. 10 feet. That's all that separated him from us now. My heart slammed against my ribs. I backed up, my boots scraping against the pavement. "Actually," I said, my voice barely steady, "I'll take that lift, B." Her eyes flicked to mine, relief flashing across her face. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. We sped-walked to her car, our gazes locked on the stranger and his gleaming black beast. My hand fumbled for my phone, instinct screaming to snap a picture of the license plate. B was rummaging in her glove box for a notepad, her hands trembling. But before either of us could act, the man flicked his half-smoked cigarette to the ground, its ember glowing like a dying eye. He slid back into the car, the door still hanging open, like a trap waiting to snap shut. The engine roared, and the car vanished into the night, leaving nothing but the acrid stench of smoke and the echo of my own pulse. We sat in B's tiny two-door, doors locked, breath shallow. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew something was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. The car, the timing, the way it parked just out of sight of the cameras. It wasn't random. It felt planned, like they'd been waiting for us to step out, for the shutter to close, for the moment we were most vulnerable. Later, I heard the shop was held up at knife point a few months after I left for a city job. No one knew if it was the same people, but the timeline gnawed at me. My mother, a true crime obsessed with a knack for seeing shadows where others saw light, had her own theory. She was convinced it wasn't about the shop at all. It was about me. The car's position in the camera's blind spot, the open door, the way they waited until I started to walk. They wanted me to pass by, to step into their reach. Why? I don't know. I wasn't rich, wasn't special, just a kid in a dead-end job. But the thought burrowed in my mind, festering. What if I'd walked home that night? What if I'd crossed the street, stepping too close to that open door? I tried to tell myself it was nothing. A rich guy with a shiny car, annoyed at his friend for smoking in his precious ride. Maybe they just wanted a late-night bottle and realized we were closed. But the details don't add up. The tinted windows, darker than any law would allow. The way the man moved, like he was planning a part. His cigarette a prop to mask his purpose. The open door beckoning. And that engine, revving like a beast waking up. I still see that car in my dreams sometimes. Its black frame lurking at the edge of my vision, waiting. And I wonder if I dodged something that night, or if it's still out there idling in the dark, biding its time. The grocery store's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as I worked the closing shift, the clock ticking closer to 10 p.m. I was 19, a college kid, slinging groceries in a quiet town near campus, the kind of place where nothing ever happened, or so I thought. The air felt heavy that night, like the world was holding its breath. At 9:30, a woman slipped into the store, her footsteps soft but deliberate, like she was stalking prey. She loaded her items onto the conveyor belt. Nothing unusual, just canned goods and a loaf of bread. But when I told her the total, her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and unblinking. "I need to grab something from my car," she said, her voice too smooth, too practiced. She paid in cash, crisp bills that felt oddly cold in my hand, and vanished into the night. I didn't think much of it then. I should have. At 10 o'clock, I locked the front doors, the glass reflecting the empty parking lot under a sickly yellow streetlight. I was about to head to my bike when a car engine snarled to life, tires screeching as it tore into the lot and stopped dead, right at the store's entrance. It was her, the same woman, her sleek sedan gleaming like it had been waxed for the first time. The windows were tinted black, hiding whatever lurked inside. She leaned out, her smile wide, too sharp. "I lost my phone," she said, pointing at me. "I was at his register. Can I go in with him to look for it?" Her voice curled around my name like a snake coiling tighter. My manager, a tired guy who just wanted to go home, shook his head. "No one's allowed in after closing," he said, but he turned to me. "Can you check real quick?" She pushed harder, her eyes locked on mine, unyielding. "I need to go with him. It's my phone." My manager held firm, and I slipped back into the store alone, my pulse thudding in my ears. The aisles felt different now, the shadows longer, the shelves looming like silent witnesses. I searched thoroughly, checking under the register, behind the counter, every corner. Nothing. No phone. I stepped back outside and told her, "Ma'am, I couldn't find it." My manager offered to call her number and look again, but I was done. I walked to my bike, the night air thick with something I couldn't name. I unlocked my e-bike, fumbling with my phone to pick a playlist, anything to drown out the unease crawling up my spine. Then I heard it, the roar of an engine, too close. Her car lurched toward me, stopping just feet away. She leaned out the window, her smile back sharper now, like a blade catching the light. "You're so polite," she said, my name dripping from her lips again. Redacted. "Do you go to school around here?" I muttered something vague, my hands tightening on the handlebars. She kept talking, her questions piling like a trap, snapping shut. "What's your major?" Redacted. "Do you live on campus?" Redacted. Each time she said my name, it felt like she was carving it into something permanent, something she could keep. Then she noticed my bike. "Is that an e-bike?" she asked, her tone too curious, too hungry. I nodded, wary. "I've been looking for one," she said, but her words felt rehearsed, like she'd said them before to someone else. She pulled out her phone, the phone she'd claimed to lose, and aimed it at me. "Can I take a picture for reference?" Redacted. I shrugged, uneasy but not sure why. Sure." She pointed the camera, but it wasn't at the bike. It was at me. "Why are you still wearing that mask?" she asked, her voice dipping low, almost mocking. "It'll give you sinus problems." Redacted. "Take it off." I shook my head, my throat tight. "I have to wear it for work." She snapped the photo anyway, her lens lingering too long on my face. Her questions kept coming, relentless. "Where do you live?" Redacted. "What time do you work?" Redacted. I started lying, spitting out fake majors, fake dorms, anything to throw her off. My keys were in my bike now, the motor humming faintly. But she didn't stop. She just kept smiling, her eyes glinting like they could see through me. Finally, I climbed onto the bike, making it clear I was done. She lingered for a moment, her car idling like a beast waiting to pounce. Then drove off, the taillights vanishing into the dark. My manager jogged over, his face pale. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, but I wasn't. Not really. I rode home, the streets too quiet, the shadows too deep. When I got to my apartment, the pieces started falling into place, each one heavier than the last. She'd had her phone the whole time. The lost phone was a lie, a way to get me alone in the store. The cash payment, no trace, no record. The photo, not of my bike, but of me. The questions probing, specific, like she was building a map of my life. And my name. How did she know it? My name tag, maybe, but the way she used it felt personal and possessive. It didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, I started noticing things. A blue car in the parking lot, always there during my shifts, its driver standing outside, staring. When I stared back, he'd slip into the car and disappear. Customers, strangers, started choosing my register, even when others were open, asking the same questions. Do you live alone? Redacted. Do you have any roommates? What's your schedule? I lied every time, my skin crawling. Coworkers told me people were asking about me, wanting to know when I'd be working. There was even a Yelp review, now deleted, that just said, does, redacted, still work here? He's so nice. It felt like a marker, a signal to someone or something watching. I don't work there anymore. I don't live in that town. But the memory clings to me like damp rot. Was it just one strange woman, a little off, a little too curious? Or was it something else? Something organized, something that saw me as prey. The cash, the lies, the photo, the questions. They all point to something darker, something that wanted me in a way I can't quite comprehend. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I hear a car engine in the distance, and I wonder if she's still out there, her phone full of pictures, my name still on her lips. I've been driving for Lyft and Uber for a while now, a side gig to bridge the gaps between paychecks at my day job. I'm 29, trans, presenting masculine for work. Baggy clothes, deep voice, the whole deal. It's easier that way. Riders don't question it, and I don't care much about pronouns. Most rides are uneventful, quiet passengers, polite small talk, or the occasional drunk who overshares. I like the job. It's steady, low pressure, and the road at night has a kind of calm to it, like the world's holding its breath. But one night, that calm turned into something else, something that clings to me still, like a shadow I can't shake. It was a late shift, the kind where the streets feel too empty, the streetlights casting long, jagged pools of yellow that never seemed to reach the corners. I just dropped off a rider when my phone pinged with a new Lyft request. $20 to $30 for a 45-minute trip. Not bad for a quick run. The pickup pin was at a strip mall, home to a fancy Japanese grill and a seedy dispensary with flickering neon lights. I pulled into the lot, parking out of the way of traffic, and hit arrive. The air was heavy, the kind of humid that sticks to your skin, and the lot was quiet, except for the distant hum of a generator. I waited, eyes flicking to my phone. 2 minutes. 3. No one. Then she appeared. A woman, thin and wiry, her silhouette cutting through the dim lights as she approached my car. She didn't open the door right away. Instead, she leaned forward, pressing her face against the rear passenger window, her breath fogging the glass. Then she laughed, a low guttural sound that didn't match the cutesy smile she flashed. She bent backwards, her torso arched at an unnatural angle, like her spine was made of rubber, her legs forming a sharp 45-degree slant. My stomach twisted. She opened the door, still snickering, and slid into the back seat, directly behind me. I forced my voice into its practiced masculine rumble. "Hi, are you?" Redacted. Her voice came out high and sing-song, like a child playing pretend, but there was something wrong with it, something that made my skin prickle. "Yeah, that'd be me," she said, her eyes locking onto the rearview mirror. Not at me, but at the mirror itself, like she was staring through it to something else. "Someone done dropped a thing in your back seat, Mr. Uberman." I glanced back and saw a small wallet, left by my last rider. "I'll keep it up here for return later," I said, reaching for it. She tilted her head, her smile widening, showing gaps where teeth should have been. "Oh, damn. Guess she must have left it on accident. Ain't you gonna call her?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes didn't blink. I told her I'd wait for a request to return it, standard procedure. She just stared, her gaze boring into the mirror, unyielding. We started driving, the highway stretching out dark and endless before us. I've driven plenty of odd passengers, drunk, eccentrics, people muttering to themselves. But she was different. Her voice was stilted, like she was mimicking something she heard but didn't understand. A mix of country drawl and something just off. I volunteered with folks who've got mental health struggles, so I'm used to keeping my cool and staying patient. But this wasn't just quirky. This was wrong. A few miles in, she spoke again. "Can we stop at a UPS store?" Her voice was casual, but it landed like a stone in still water. I glanced at her in the rear view. Sure. Where's the nearest one?" I asked, pulling up Google Maps. She waved a hand, her nails chipped and uneven. "Oh, you don't have to, but I gotta get my friend out of jail. If I don't get this package, he gonna be there overnight." Her words hung in the air, heavy with something unspoken. I forced a neutral tone. "Oh? What's the package got to do with jail?" She smiled, her lips curling too far, too sharp. "Well, he gonna be there all night if we don't get him out. He in jail for killing." My hands tightened on the wheel, my pulse spiking. "Killing?" I didn't say it out loud, but my face must have given it away because her smile grew, her eyes glinting like she caught me in a trap. "Oh, we don't have to go there," she said, her voice softening, mocking. "Let's keep going. I know you Uber guys gotta make your money. Don't got a lot, do ya?" I laughed, a nervous reflex, and said, "Yeah, but I don't mind stopping if you need me to." Wrong move. Her gaze snapped to the rear view again, unblinking, like she was studying me. We hit the highway, the hum of the tires, the only sound for a mile. Then she spoke, her voice low, almost intimate. "I likes this car. What car this be?" I told her, keeping it short. "Oh, it's nice," she said, dragging out the words. "You like it? You like this car?" I nodded, my throat dry. "Yep, it's nice." She turned to the empty seat beside her head tilting like she was listening to someone. "No, It's his car, she snapped, her voice sharp now. No, I don't think he wants to do that. Stop it. I glanced in the mirror, my skin crawling. Everything okay? I asked, forcing calm. She smiled again, her missing teeth making it look like a grimace. Oh, my friend just say this car's nice. I tried to focus on the road, the yellow lines blurring under my headlights. People talk to themselves sometimes. It's not a big deal. But then she kept going, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mr. Uberman, do you think it's okay to steal if you have to? My stomach lurched. What do you mean? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Like, if I was in a grocery store and wanted bread, I should be able to take it, right? Especially if I work there. I shrugged, non-committal, my eyes flickering in the mirror. She was staring at the trunk now, her lips moving like she was arguing with someone or something back there. I ain't no thief, she shouted suddenly, her voice cracking. I got money, right? Mr. Uberman, I got a job, so I ain't poor. She turned to the empty seat again, her voice rising. What? No, you tell her to simmer down. He's a nice man. Her rant spiraled, switching between the seat and the trunk. Her words a jumble of defiance and desperation. Poor people pretend they ain't poor, but I ain't like that. She smirked, her eyes catching mine in the mirror, and it felt like a blade sliding across my skin. I kept driving, my knuckles white on the wheel. I told myself she was just unstable, that this was just a weird ride. But then she spoke again, her voice soft, almost tender, and it was worse than her shouting. Ain't you sleepy, Mr. Uberman? You hungry, honey? They say you're really sleepy. My breath caught. They? I forced a laugh. No, I'm okay. Thanks, though. She leaned forward, her face closer to the back of my head, her breath audible. I'll pay if we stop, she said, her voice sing-song again. Maybe you could pull over and nap for a bit. Her teeth were bared now, not a smile but a snarl, and I felt a scream building in my chest. I shook my head, eyes fixed on the road. I'm good, really. She didn't let up. Well, you killed her, so it is what it is, she said, her voice flat, directed at the trunk. My heart stopped. Killed her? I didn't ask. I didn't dare. She was talking to someone or something that wasn't there. Someone she thought was dead. My mind raced, conjuring images of bodies and trunks, of crimes I didn't want to know about. I kept driving, the destination pin my only lifeline. At a stop sign, she leaned forward again, her bony finger jabbing my shoulder, sharp enough to make me flinch. How's your body feel, Mr. Uberman? She whispered, her voice curling like smoke. You sure you don't want something to eat? I could feed you if you just pull over somewhere. Her words were a lure, a trap, and I felt the weight of her stare, heavy and unyielding. He's sleepy, ain't he? She said, not to me, but to the air behind her. He gonna kill someone if we don't get some sleep. Someone gonna die. He got two choices. He choose. My blood ran cold. Who's gonna kill someone? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. her face twisted, angry now, like I caught her in a lie. "Nothing. No one," she snapped, but her eyes didn't leave the mirror. She kept pushing her voice, a relentless drip of poison. "Stop here. Pull over. You're tired. You're hungry." Each request felt like a test, like she was waiting for me to make the wrong move. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands trembling, my mind screaming to get to the destination. The highway stretched on, the darkness pressing in, her presence behind me like a weight on my spine. I could feel her watching, her gaze a physical thing crawling over me. She argued with the air, with them, her voice swinging from rage to that eerie cutesy tone. "They wanted to rob me. They thought I should die. They were angry. I wouldn't stop." Finally, we reached her destination, a nondescript house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that looks normal but feels wrong, like the air itself is holding its breath. She got out, her movements slow, deliberate. "Oh, thank you for being so patient," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Make sure you don't forget to eat." The pauses were deliberate, each word a needle. Then she came around to my driver's side window, pressed her face against the glass, her lips curling into a smile that showed way too many gaps, too much hunger. I didn't wait. I hit the gas and drove. The image of her face burned into my mind. I didn't drive for Lyft for a week after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in the rearview, her eyes black and unblinking, her voice whispering about sleep and death. I kept thinking about her friend in jail, the one who killed, about the package she never picked up, about the way she talked to the trunk, to them. Was she unstable, or was she something else? Something that knew exactly what it was doing? I don't know, but I know she wanted me to stop, to pull over into the dark, and I know I didn't. I keep my car doors locked now, my eyes on the mirror, waiting for her face to appear again. Because deep down, I'm not sure she's gone, and I'm not sure she ever will be. I'd been living in the northernmost reaches of the Scottish Highlands for 2.5 years, a small coastal town so far north it felt like the edge of the world. I dreamed of this place since I was a kid, stuck in the gray gloom of my English hometown, picturing a land of rugged mountains, wild seas, and vibrant life. When my dad and his partner bought an old house up here, I leapt at the chance to join them. They painted a picture of paradise, seals and otters gliding through the town's river, dolphins and orcas breathing in the bay, the northern lights painting the sky in winter. It sounded like freedom, like a place where I could finally breathe. But the highlands aren't what they seem in postcards. Beneath the beauty, there's a darkness, a weight in the air that presses against you, watches you. I learned that the hard way. I spent my days exploring the coastline, mapping the rugged cliffs and pebbled shores east of town. Beyond the river's mouth, where the ruins of an old castle crumbled into the sea, a cliff trail wound along the coast, wild and untamed. I had walked for hours, the wind sharp with salt, the gulls screaming overhead. It was my escape, my way of grounding myself in this strange, lonely place. But the highlands have a way of making you feel small, like the land itself is older than you can ever comprehend. its secrets buried in the stones. It was Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, 6 months after a brutal breakup that left me raw and restless. I was 24, adrift, craving solitude to stitch myself back together. So I packed a backpack, sandwiches, water, and a thermos of tea and set out at 6 a.m. The sky was still black, the air biting. The cliff trail was my destination, a long hike to burn through the ache in my chest. I'd walked it before, but never this far, never this late. The trail was treacherous, winding along sheer drops where the sea churned below, hungry and gray. By evening, my legs were heavy, my boots caked with mud, but I'd gone further than ever before, driven by something I couldn't name. Grief, maybe, or defiance. That's when I found it. An abandoned port settlement. A cluster of old stone houses hunched against the wind, their windows dark and empty. A crumbling round tower loomed at the edge, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. At first, I thought it was a ghost town, forgotten by time, but a weathered sign marked it as a heritage center, a tourist spot meant to preserve the past. It was desolate, the kind of place that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for you to make a mistake. I'd walked 10 miles from town, further than I had planned, and across the bay, I saw cliffs, taller, grander than the ones I'd trekked, their faces sheer and unforgiving. My body screamed to stop, my muscles burning, but the cliffs called to me, a challenge I couldn't resist. I decided to cross the bay, reach them, and then turn back. A foolish choice, but I was too stubborn to care. Night fell fast, the kind of dark that swallows everything. The bay was wider than it looked, the cliffs no closer despite my trudging steps. The tide was rising, the sea's roar growing louder, and I realized my mistake. The trail back hugged the cliff base in places, and a high tide would trap me, cut me off. I turned around, my phone's flashlight a frail beam against the blackness, my breath fogging in the cold. The settlement loomed ahead as I retraced my steps, its stone houses now menacing in the dark, their windows like empty eyes. I swept my light across them, half expecting a face to peer back, pale and wrong. Old fishing boats sat abandoned outside, their wood warped, paint flaked away like skin. They looked ancient, relics of a time that didn't want to be remembered, and they made the silence heavier, as if they were waiting for their owners to return from the grave. Then I heard it, a low rumble, the crunch of tires on gravel. A van pulled into the settlement, its headlights slicing through the dark, stopping near one of the houses. 3 or 4 men climbed out, their shapes vague but purposeful. They gathered around a trash can, and soon flames flickered, casting their faces in sharp, shifting shadows. I couldn't see what they were burning, but the air carried a sour chemical tang, like plastic or something worse. My stomach twisted. I was alone, 10 miles from town, with no signal, no way to call for help. Every time I glanced back, at least one of them was watching me, their eyes glinting in the firelight, unblinking, like predators sizing up prey. I told myself they were just locals, maybe kids messing around, but their silence, their stares, felt deliberate, like I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't meant to see. I quickened my pace, my flashlight beam jittery, my heart pounding. The settlement felt alive now, its shadows moving just beyond the light, the stones whispering secrets I couldn't hear. I was paranoid, sure, but the fear was real, a cold weight in my chest. What if they followed me? What if they thought I'd seen too much? The trail stretched ahead, narrow and treacherous, the cliffs dropping to the sea on one side, the scrub and rock on the other. Every rustle of the wind was a footstep, every wave a voice. I kept moving, my legs aching, my breath shallow, the men's stares burning into my back. But the settlement, the men, the fire, they weren't the worst of it. The real terror came before I even reached the ghost town on my way back, out on the bay, in the dark. I turned around, realizing the tide was too close, the cliffs too far. The night was absolute, my phone's flashlight barely piercing the void. I was halfway across the bay when I heard it, a sound that wasn't the sea, wasn't the wind. A low, rhythmic scraping, like something dragging across the sand. I froze, my light sweeping the shore, finding nothing but rocks and seaweed. My pulse thundered, my skin prickling. I told myself it was the tide, a branch caught in the current, but the sound followed me, steady, deliberate, keeping pace with my steps. I swung my flashlight behind me, and for a moment, I thought I saw it. A shape, low and hunched, moving just beyond the light's reach. It was gone when I looked again, swallowed by the dark, but my body knew what my mind refused to accept. Something was there, tracking me, its presence a weight I could feel but not see. I walked faster, my boots slipping on the slick rocks, the scraping growing louder, closer. My phone's battery was draining, the light flickering, and I cursed myself for not bringing a proper torch. The settlement was still a mile away, the trail back to town even further, and I was alone with whatever was out there. The scraping stopped, sudden and unnatural, replaced by a silence that was worse. I held my breath, listening, my flashlight trembling in my hands. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not words, but a sound, like breath shaped into intent. It came from the cliffs, from the shadows above. But I realized I wasn't just being followed. I was being watched, studied, like prey in a trap. My mind raced. Stories I've heard from locals have joking tales of old spirits, of smugglers who used these cliffs to hide their crimes, of things that weren't human but walked like they were. I didn't believe in ghosts, but in that moment, I believed in something that wanted me to stay. I ran, my legs burning, my lungs screaming. The trail a blur of rock and sand. The settlement came into view, its stone houses looming like centennials. And that's when I saw the van, the men, the fire. They were a new threat, but they were human, tangible, unlike whatever had trailed me across the bay. I avoided them, keeping to the shadows, my flashlight off now, the moonlight my only guide. The trail back was a nightmare, every step a gamble against the cliffs, the tide, the dark. The scraping didn't return, but the feeling of being watched never left. A cold hand on my neck, guiding me home. I made it back to town at dawn, my body trembling, my mind fractured. I didn't tell anyone, not my dad, not his partner. How could I explain it? The ghost town, the men, the thing in the bay. It sounded like madness, even to me. I haven't gone back to that trail, haven't walked those cliffs again. The highlands are beautiful, yes, but they're old, older than us, and they remember things we've forgotten. I see that settlement in my dreams, its windows dark, its boats rotting, and hear that scraping. Feel those eyes. Whoever or whatever you are out there in the dark, let's not meet again. Not in this life or any other. I was 22, broke and desperate when I moved to Abilene in the early 2000s, chasing a job that vanished like smoke the moment I arrived. Rent loomed, my fridge was empty, and my gas tank was running on fumes. With just a couple $100 in savings, the weight of failure pressed down on me, heavy and relentless. But luck, or something like it, threw me a lifeline. Daryl, my new roommate, a lanky computer nerd who seemed to live half of his life in the glow of his monitor. This was before the internet was everyone's lifeline, when Craigslist was a murky corner of the digital world and job boards were barely a thing. When I spilled my money woes to Daryl, expecting nothing but sympathy, he surprised me. "I'll find you something," he said, his fingers already dancing across his keyboard. I didn't hold my breath. Abilene wasn't exactly bursting with opportunity, but within hours, he called me over, a grin on his face. "Check this out," he said, pointing to a Craigslist ad. I half expected some humiliating gig like waving a sign outside a bank, but it was something else. $100 a day to clear out a garage in an old house. No experience needed, just a strong back and a willingness to work. It sounded too good to be true, and maybe I should have listened to that nagging voice in my head, the one that whispered about traps hidden in easy promises. The guy's name was Rick, a house flipper who bought old properties, gutted them, and sold them for a profit. He had a gruff but friendly voice over the phone, the kind that put you at ease, and after a quick chat, he decided I was the guy. We set a date, and I drove to the address he gave me, a sagging Victorian on the edge of Abilene, its paint peeling like dead skin, its windows dark and uninviting. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, the kind of place that felt like it remembered every soul who'd ever lived there. Rick met me in the driveway, a stocky man in his 40s with a handshake that was firm but lingered a second too long. We shared coffee from a thermos, the bitter taste grounding me as he led me to the garage. That's when I saw why he was paying so well. The place was a nightmare. Trash piled floor to the ceiling, mountains of broken furniture, rusted appliances, and toys that looked like they'd been abandoned mid-play. Cobwebs draped everything, thick and gray, and the floor was a carpet of dust so deep it crunched under my boots. We had to clear a path just to move inside, hauling junk to a rented dumpster while salvaging anything worth restoring. It was grueling, the air heavy with mildew and something sharper, something I couldn't name. We worked for hours, the sun climbing high, the garage revealing its secrets, one layer at a time. Around noon, we uncovered a row of cabinets along one wall, their wood warped but intact. Rick opened them, rummaging through the shadows, and let out a low whistle. "Well, what do we have here?" he said, pulling out a wooden box, half the size of a shoebox. its surface carved with intricate patterns that gleamed faintly under the dust. It was beautiful, the kind of thing you'd find in an antique shop. But there was something off about it, something that made my skin prickle. Rick set it on the counter and opened it, revealing a 6-shooter nestled in faded velvet, its barrel engraved with swirling designs that seemed to shift in the light. It looked like a museum piece, silver-plated, maybe, worth thousands at auction. Rick said, his eyes glinting with greed. I agreed, but the gun unsettled me. It wasn't just old. It felt alive, like it was watching us, waiting. I congratulated Rick on his find and turned back to the junk, eager to put distance between me and that box. We kept at it, the garage slowly yielding to our efforts, but the weight of that gun lingered, a shadow in my peripheral vision. Just after 1 p.m., Rick clapped me on the shoulder. "You hungry?" he asked. I was starving, my stomach gnawing at itself. When he handed me $50 for lunch, his treat, he said, with change to keep, I didn't argue. He sent me to his favorite barbecue joint, a 20-minute drive away, and I returned with 2 bags, heavy with brisket, links, pickles, and potato salad, the smell making my mouth water. The drive-away was a maze of junk, so I had to circle around to the garage's back door, my arms full, the sun beating down. As I approached, I saw Rick standing in the doorway, his back to me, motionless. "Hey man, back with lunch," I called, expecting him to turn, to grin at the sight of food. He didn't move. Not a twitch, not a sound. The air shifted, grew thick, like the world was holding its breath. I don't know why, but a chill ran through me, a primal warning that rooted me to the spot. We'd been working all morning, sweating and joking, and if he was as hungry as I was, his silence was wrong, unnatural. I called again, louder. "Yo, Rick, what's the holdup? Let's eat." He jerked his head to the side, a sharp mechanical motion, like he'd only just heard me. Slowly, he turned, and that's when I saw it. The wooden box on the counter, open and empty, the bullets gone. In his hand was the 6-shooter, its barrel gleaming dully, pointed at the ground. Blood trickled from his nose, a thin, dark stream that hadn't yet reached his chin, fresh and wet. One of his eyes was bloodshot, not the red of fatigue or weed, but something violent, like a vessel had burst, the white swallowed by a blackish crimson. His face was wrong, his expression blank but straining, like he was fighting something inside himself. I froze, the bags of barbecue heavy in my hands, my mind screaming. He looked like he was dying, like a stroke or a seizure had taken him. But the gun was alive in his grip, its engravings catching the light, whispering. He raised it, slow and jerky, the barrel tilting towards me, and I saw his arm tremble, his jaw clenched, like he was wrestling with his own body. I didn't think, didn't speak. I dropped the bags and ran, my boots pounding the dirt. The world narrowing to the path to my car. 2 gunshots cracked behind me, sharp and deafening, followed by a crash, like a tower of junk had collapsed. I didn't look back, didn't stop, my heart a drum in my chest. I reached my car, yanked open the glove compartment, and grabbed my own gun, a cheap revolver I kept for emergencies. I trained it on the path from the garage, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. I could have left, pulled out, and never looked back, but the thought of Rick stumbling into the street, gun in hand, stopped me. If someone got hurt, it'd be on me. I started whistling, loud and shrill, until a neighbor appeared, an older man with wary eyes. "Call the cops," I shouted, "and EMS. Someone's gone crazy with a gun." He vanished inside, and soon, sirens wailed, growing closer. 2 officers arrived, their car skidding to a stop. I stashed my gun before they saw it and pointed them toward the garage, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. They moved in, shouting commands. "Police, come out with your hands up." And I braced for more shots. None came. One cop emerged, his face grim. "He needs an ambulance," he said, and relief flooded me, tinged with dread. Rick was alive, but the image of him, blood streaming, eye blackened, gun trembling, burned into my mind. EMS arrived, and I watched them wheel Rick out, an oxygen mask strapped to his face, his body limp. He didn't look human anymore, more like a puppet with its strings cut. I told the cops everything from the morning's work to the gun, the blood, the way Rick fought himself. They listened, jotting notes, but their eyes were skeptical, like I was spinning a tale. The EMTs wouldn't say if he'd make it, just loaded him into the ambulance and drove off, the sirens fading into the Abilene heat. I drove home, the barbecue left rotting in the dirt, the gun's engravings seared into my memory. For a month, I heard nothing, the silence louder than the gunshots. I kept my doors locked, my revolver close, jumping at every creak of the house. Then, Rick called, his voice weak but clear, apologizing, offering the $100 he owed me. I told him to keep it, that I was just glad he was okay, but he insisted on coming over, saying he owed me more than money. When he arrived, he looked older, his eyes haunted, his hands unsteady. Over coffee, he told me what happened. He'd felt funny the moment he picked up the 6-shooter again, waiting for me to return with lunch. His memory blurred like a dream he couldn't grasp. When he saw me in the doorway, he didn't know me, saw only a stranger, a threat. The gun felt heavy, alive, urging his hand to rise, to pull the trigger. He fought it, every muscle screaming, until I ran. And then, nothing. He woke in the ambulance, the gun gone, his mind his own again. The doctors called it a seizure, maybe, or something they couldn't name. But Rick's eyes told me he believed it was the gun, that it had wanted something. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, thick with cash, over $2,000. The 6-shooter had sold at auction, he said, to a collector who paid double the buyout before it even hit the block. He wouldn't say how much, but it was enough to share, he insisted, because I'd saved his life. I laughed, uneasy, and said, I knew that thing was expensive. But I didn't feel like a hero. I'd been ready to shoot him, my finger on the trigger, my heart cold with fear. If I'd stayed a second longer, if he'd raised that gun higher, one of us would be dead. I took the money. God knows I needed it. But it felt dirty, like a payment for surviving something I shouldn't have. Rick left and we never spoke again. I stayed in Abilene a while longer, but the house, the town, The memory of that garage, it all felt tainted. I think about Rick sometimes, wonder if he's still flipping houses, if that funny feeling ever came back. But mostly, I think about that gun, its engravings that seemed to move, its weight in Rick's hand, the way it turned him into something else. Was it just a seizure? A trick of the mind? Or was there something in that box? Something old and hungry, waiting for the right moment? I don't know. But I know how close I came to dying, how close Rick came to killing me. All because of a job I found on Craigslist. A job that led me to a garage filled with more than junk. Whatever you were, Rick, or whoever held that gun, let's not meet again. Not in Abilene. Not anywhere else. I'd been a cop for 15 years, mostly chasing numbers in the financial crimes unit after a brief stunt in homicide. The grand larceny division suited me. Numbers don't lie. Not like people do. Suspects could spin tales in interviews, but their accounts always betrayed them. The truth etched in cold, hard digits. I got good at it. Damn good. Peeling back layers of fraud like an onion, each revelation sharper than the last. When I retired, I traded the badge for a private detective's license, setting up a cramped office with peeling paint and a desk that wobbled. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time, I could choose my cases, ones that sparked something in me that demanded to be unraveled. That's how I ended up on the case that nearly killed me, the one that still haunts the edges of my sleep, whispering in the dark. It started with a call from a lawyer I knew from my cop days, his voice smooth but urgent. A multinational corporation, a behemoth with tendrils in every major country, suspected someone was tampering with their cash flow, a river of money that could drown a small nation. They needed someone with my knack for numbers, and the pay was too good to refuse, a figure that made my eyes water. I didn't hesitate, but maybe I should have felt the weight of that discussion, the way it settled over me like a shadow. The company's accounts were a labyrinth, a tangle of transfers, receipts, and invoices spanning continents. I dove in, spreadsheets sprawling across my desk, bank statements glowing on my screen, each page a puzzle piece in a game I thought I knew how to play. Days blurred into nights, my office lit by the sickly glow of my monitor, coffee cups piling up like tombstones. Then I found it. Subtle inconsistencies, like cracks in a dam. Payments funneled to shell companies that existed only on paper. Amounts that didn't align with patterns. Transactions time-stamped at odd hours when no one should have been working. To an untrained eye, they were clerical errors, innocent oversights. But I knew better. Money was bleeding out, siphoned by someone clever, someone inside. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't a mistake. It was a scheme, meticulous and brazen, hidden just well enough to evade casual scrutiny. The numbers led me to a trail, but I needed names, faces, motives. I set up interviews with key players, starting with the CFO, a man named Edward Klein. His office was a cathedral of glass and steel, floor to ceiling, windows framing the city skyline like a king's view. He greeted me with a handshake, his smile polished but cold. his eyes scanning me like I was a ledger to be balanced. I kept it light at first, asking broad questions about the company's finances, letting him relax. Then I zeroed in on a transfer that had caught my eye. A seven-figured sum wired to a vague offshore account. "Who signed off on this?" I asked, my voice casual, but my gaze steady. He blinked, his smile flickering. "I don't recall," he said, leaning back. "Someone in my department, probably. I don't handle every detail myself." The words were smooth, but they landed like a lie. CFOs don't forget multi-million-dollar transfers, not unless they're hiding something. His answer left a sour taste, a warning I couldn't ignore. Next, I spoke with his colleagues, people who saw his daily moves. A mid-level manager, a nervous type who oversaw international accounts, mentioned a meeting where the transfer was discussed. Klein had claimed he wasn't there, but the manager swore he was, his memory unshaken even when I pressed. Then there was Klein's assistant, a woman with years on the finance team, her hands twisting in her lap as she spoke. She didn't recall specifics, she said, but she remembered Klein signing off on something big, something urgent, rushing the team to process it. Two stories, both contradicting Klein's. The cracks were widening, and I could feel the case pulsing, alive with secrets. I left the building, my mind racing, and headed to my car in a quiet lot a block away. It was an old habit from my cop days, carrying a small tape recorder to capture thoughts after meetings, a way to untangle my brain. I slid into the driver's seat, hit record, and started talking, laying out the gaps in Klein's story. The assistant's nervous admission, the manager's certainty. I was on to something, I said. Something big, maybe international wire fraud, with Klein at the center. I was about to say more when a crack split the air, sharp and final. My driver's side window exploded, glass raining all over me like jagged snow. Instinct kicked in. I ducked, my body folded into the seat, but I wasn't fast enough. 4 shots followed, each a thunderclap in a quiet lot. The first bullet tore through the dashboard, splintering plastic just above my lap, the impact vibrating through my thighs. The second grazed my left shoulder, a hot knife slicing through jacket and skin, blood soaking my sleeve as I jerked sideways, my head slamming against the steering wheel. The third punched into the passenger seat, inches from my ribs, the stuffing erupting into a puff of foam. My heart was a jackhammer, adrenaline screaming at me to move. But there was no time. The fourth shot hit me square in the jaw, a sledgehammer of pain exploding through my skull. The bullet entered below my left cheekbone, shattering bone and teeth, carving a path through muscle before exiting near my ear. My mouth filled with blood, thick and coppery, mixed with the chalky grit of my own teeth, splintered into dust. My vision blurred, the world tilting, darkness creeping in like ink. My hands flailed, grasping for the wheel, the door, anything, but my body was shutting down. The last thing I heard was the recorder's faint hiss, still running, capturing my descent into oblivion. I woke in a hospital bed, the beep of monitors cutting through a haze of pain. My body ached, my shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed it. But my jaw was a prison of agony. bolted shut with metal wires. Every breath hurt. Every twitch sent fire through my face. A nurse hurried over, her voice gentle but firm, telling me not to move. I had no memory at first, just a void, but her words, "You were shot multiple times," unlocked it all. The lot, the glass, the bullets. The shoulder graze was minor, she said, stitched and bandaged. But my jaw was a wreck. The bullet had fractured my mandible in 2 places, obliterated half my lower teeth, torn out a chunk of tissue. Surgeons had stopped the bleeding, wired my bones together, and sucked out the shattered roots to prevent infection. I was lucky to be alive, she kept saying, but the word lucky felt like a cruel joke. I couldn't speak, my words trapped behind a cage of metal and pain. I gestured for a notepad, my hand trembling as I scrawled questions. Who shot me? What happened? The nurse didn't know, only that the police were investigating. The surgeon came later, a tall man with a calm voice, explaining the damage. My shoulder would heal, but my teeth were gone. My jaw a patchwork of wires that might take months to remove. I'd need implants, therapy, time. But my mind wasn't on recovery. It was on the shooter, on Klein, on the case that had painted a target on my back. 2 detectives visited the next morning, their faces grim as they read my scribbled account. They filled in the gaps. My car was a crime scene, riddled with bullet holes, blood-soaked and cordoned off. The tape recorder had caught everything. The shots, my choking gasps, the silence after I blacked out. It was evidence now, locked away. Security footage from a store across the street shows a grainy figure, a shadow of a man, hesitating before firing, then fleeing in a panic. An amateur, one detective said, not a pro. A real hitman would have finished the job. They found 9mm casings. No prints, no leads. I wrote about Klein, my suspicions of fraud, but their nods were skeptical. Corporate cases were murky, they said, and without a direct link, Klein was untouchable. The hospital became my world, a sterile cage of pain and pills. My shoulder itched under its stitches, my jaw a constant throb, flaring into agony with every wrong move. I couldn't eat. Nurses fed me gray mush through a straw, broth and mashed vegetables that tasted like despair. Swallowing was torture, but I forced it down, driven by a stubborn need to survive. Physical therapy started early, a grueling ritual to keep my jaw from locking forever. Claire, my therapist, was patient, guiding me through exercises that left me sweating, my muscles screaming. Some days I could open my mouth a fraction, others, nothing. She'd nod, unfazed, while I cursed my broken body in silence. The silence was worse than the pain. I'd always been a talker, quick with a quip, but now I was mute, reduced to scribbles and gestures. Friends visited, their pity a weight I couldn't bear. My sister came, her eyes wet as she watched me sip mush, her silence louder than words. The nightmares started soon after, gunshots echoing in my dreams, glass shattering, blood flooding my mouth. I'd wake, heart racing, trying to scream, only for pain to clamp my jaw shut. By day, I replayed the attack, Klein's smug face looming, his lies a thread I couldn't pull without unraveling myself. Paranoia crept in. I'd stare out my hospital window, half expecting a sniper's glint. My nerves raw despite the sedatives. After 2 months, I was discharged. My home felt wrong, too exposed, too fragile. The shooter was still out there, a ghost with a gun, and I couldn't stay. I sold my office lease, packed my life, and moved to a new town under a false name. Now, I take small cases, infidelity, petty disputes, safe, distant jobs where I watch through a lens, never getting too close. My jaw clicks when I eat, my smile crooked, my implants a poor substitute for what I'd lost. My voice returned, slow and slurred, a stranger's cadence to those who knew me before. The nightmares linger, fainter but never gone. The detectives called 6 months later, their voices heavy. They'd been pulled away from the case. No suspects, no arrests. I wasn't angry, just numb. Klein's the key, I'm sure, but he's untouchable. His tracks buried in a maze of money and power. The company turns on, its river of cash undisturbed, while I'm just the man who got too close to the truth. I survived, but at a cost. Scars, silence, and a fear that follows me, a shadow I can't shake. Whoever you are, shooter in the dark, whoever paid you, I'm still here. But I know you're out there too, waiting for another chance. So, I hope we never meet again. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true creepy stories. I'd like to take a quick moment and acknowledge the other members of Back to Ashes, along with the new listeners. To the other members, thank you so much for your continued and dedicated support. It's what keeps this channel going. And for the new listeners, welcome to Back to Ashes. I really hope you join our family here. And as I always say, without you all for support, listening, I would not have a voice and there would not be a Back to Ashes. Thank you. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. In the meantime, please stay vigilant and take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.